This conference will now be recorded.
This is CON01's 2019 Facility Plan meeting with the State Construction Department, and we'll go around the table and introduce ourselves.
Amber Leach with Planning and State Construction. My role here is to work with the districts and the documentation for today's facility plan meeting.
Troy Decker, Planning. My role here is quality control, make sure we abide by all state statutes, rules, and regs in the facility planning process, and also to make sure we capture what we need in order to report to the Select Committee on school facilities and also to the Commission, and then make sure that everybody has voice in the process so that any concerns or needs you have are expressed clearly and you have freedom to do that, and we're free to respond to those things.
Good morning, my name is Bob Herzog. I am the Northeast Regional Project Manager, and which your district is in that area. So I'm here to help you guys out with whatever you got going in the district.
I'm Paige Fenton Hughes. I'm the superintendent in CON01, Douglas.
Mitch Johnson, I'm the maintenance director for CON01 in Douglas.
Tracy Boner, business manager, CON01 in Douglas.
Dan Odaz with Plan 1 Architects, consultant to the district.
Karen Moon with Plan 1 Architects, consultant.
All right, thank you. Being a former classroom teacher, I'm going to move Ms. Page across from me, if you don't mind, because I'm going to have a hard time seeing you. And I'm going to be looking like this.
You look straight through, you could probably see.
So, if you don't mind.
I can do it.
Sign seating.
Anything for you, Troy.
All righty, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, well, welcome this morning. Thanks for coming, and it's always a pleasure meeting with the districts each year, and we have 48 of them. We've done 30, well, actually 30 out of 52 meetings for with regard to, no, we don't have 52 districts, but we do have 4 charter schools that we also meet within districts. So we've started doing that the last several years. So at any rate, actually five total. Thanks. So I think I've got everybody here. Brandon has really gotten sucked into the legislative part of our lives with Shelby gone and stuff, no administrator, so we may or may not see him at some point. Paul Severson, he usually joins us. Don't know, but we'll move forward with that. And then Raj, I don't think he's going to be here on today's. Okay, so Raj Dami, he's our accounting analyst, and we use him quite a bit. You guys may know Charlie Kaufman is no longer with us, and we're just thrilled to death. because we're so proud of him. He's just a great guy, and he's now business manager in Plat 1. And I wrote him a letter of reference recommendation that was stellar because he's stellar. And so we're really happy for him, and he's been thinking about it for several years, and that was an opportunity for him. So like any good boss and everybody who cares for people, you empower them to better their lives, and so we're excited for him. But we're hurting. We're actually covering 3 positions right now: a public information officer, Shelby's past job administration, and now his data job. So we're kind of spread thin, and I'm sure you know how that is in your own lives. One thing that we've really improved on these facility plans over the years, but one thing we do is we have on occasion had the governor's office request facility plans. We've had legislators request facility plans. And so what we try to do is we try to bring in a bunch of visuals in these facility plans so that if we're passing this up the chain and someone wants a 5 or 10 minute understanding of your district, they can look at it and they can really have a good understanding of what's important to you, what's going on, where your buildings are, what was discussed. So in the past, and so if the district says, hey, I'm concerned about such and such, we respond to, I'm concerned about such and such. We don't leave it blank. So we really try to be complete as possible. We don't try to be ridiculous, but at the same time, we try to give that, that 20,000 look for everybody involved. This is also an important process because I know it's hard to believe, but you have changeover in districts. And when you get new business managers, facility directors, and superintendents, this is such a great tool for them because they can go back 3, 4, 5 years, look at what the history is, and then bring that history back into where they are and the decisions they are then making because of their role. And then the other thing we've really improved on, and Charlie did a really good job of this, and that is that we've used for most of them, they're now the GIS sites for the counties are really important, and we've actually verified acreages and stuff. And in the past, we said, hey, what's your acreage? Bring it in the database. Now we have verifiable data. And then if districts have any issues with that, we say, go talk to your county assessor, right? You go do your thing, straighten it out, then you get back to us, and what the county GIS site says is the authority. So at any rate, and then the other thing we tried to do, and someone caught us not having the, which one was that? The
Moss agate.
Moss agate, not in, so I brought it in, and you can't even see it, but there it is, and it's so beautiful. Obviously,
Snowy.
yeah, and snowy, so that must have been a winter picture there. Again, this is just illustrative, but that's just good. So one of the other improvements we've done over the years is we've got Amber, and she's an improvement tremendously for us. So we've got a person dedicated to nothing but working with school districts and preparing for these meetings. So when we get together, we're not sitting there going through a database going, now, how many acres is that? And we don't waste your time, you don't waste our time. That's all done from the front end. So this first part we're going to go through fairly quickly unless you have any comments, and then we'll get to the discussion parts where it involves all of us. So district, you have reviewed the acreages and verified the accuracy. This does, and we just started telling districts on the front end, guys, these are reported to WDE and they do impact your money, your bottom line. So we want to make sure that you have verification on that. It does impact your groundskeeper allowances, and so thank you for doing that. I did have a question on this morning. You guys do have a land lease on Walker Creek at Walker Creek Elementary School, and that runs out in 2021. So I did before the meeting just quickly ask Amber to peruse that lease. And I'm just asking, okay, when it runs out in 2021, what does that mean for you guys? What's the lease say? Is it an automatic renewal? Do you guys have to go back and
I
do
haven't
it?
looked at for a while either.
Okay.
There is no mention of an automatic renewal. It'll be like setting up a brand new lease with them. So and of course I'm just skimming through it, but that was what I had seen when I went through it.
I do this right in front of everybody. I just do typing. If you see anything, Amber gets all excited. She catches me in a spelling error. So don't. If I do a spelling error, don't catch it. Let her catch it. It's
Please catch it, because I'll never catch it.
It's pretty exciting. But I do that. If you see something I type, it's collectively, right? This is your facility plan. It's our facility plan. We want to make sure it looks good. So Walker Creek lease needs to be looked at by the district for consideration of renewal. Are there still students out there now?
4.
Okay. In a few years, right? So we just wanted to point that out to you and make sure that isn't lost by you guys, and all of a sudden you're sitting on a piece of land that the lease isn't up to date. Moss agate photo, you mentioned it wasn't up there. I put it up there, and then I just said the AIM database is up to date with regard to the land. You can see that, right?
Yep.
Property profiles, I can make that larger. Okay. Property profiles, thank you for verifying accuracy here. This means a lot. WDE sends us their enrollment numbers that you report the first school day of October. It takes them about 2-3 months to scrub those. They send them late December. This goes over to whatever's in the database about April. We send stuff over to WDE so they can start calculating your block grant from information we send them. So the square footages and part of this is allowable square footage. That impacts your major maintenance payments, so that's important. And then WDE operations and maintenance payments are also generated through the data that we send them upon their request. Now I think they still send you verification for like teacher stations and stuff, and we've worked really hard because that has an impact also. We've worked really hard to make sure that our teaching stations are accurate, and in the past I think they weren't as accurate as they should be, or could be, I should say, in the development of a database. But I know also that they send stuff out to you guys and you verify also that information, so it's not just verifiable now, but there's other things that you guys have to look at, and I know you do. Here's just the same kind of thing, just your different property profiles. So you guys have verified that, so thanks for doing that. Building leases are important for accuracy because they can impact the allowable square footage that affects major maintenance payments. So if you have leases and it's a qualified educational program within your space, then that if your ADM it drives enough allowable and it includes that piece that's being leased by a qualified educational program, we can count that square footage as part of your major maintenance calculation. If it's not an approved educational program, then we can't count it, even though your ADM would drive a higher allowable, if that makes sense. And then enhancements, these are important because we report them by the state statute. We report these to the legislature on a regular basis, on an annual basis. So those are good. So I think we've got that. So I just said AIM database is updated. District appropriations. I understand all three of these are not complete, and there's a reason for that. And I put down here a reappropriation, which you guys mentioned later on. Reappropriation request is being considered by the legislature in the present supplemental budget review next year. So we don't want to just close those, because what we're going to have to do is then move those back around, if approved, to your new modular at, remind me? Shawnee, thank you.
And we still have a little work out at which school, Mitch?
Dry Creek. We're
Site work, yeah.
waiting to hear back from
Trey.
Trey. I think he's in Arizona though, or his sister is, so he's going to get a hold of her.
Okay. All right, Bob is going to talk to you about security.
Okay.
So, district, speak up whenever you need to. That was kind of formality, right? Now we'll get on to the good stuff.
All right, well, I've got some prepared information here about our security funding, past, present, and future. The original funding was set up in the 2014 House Enrolled Act number 0056, which is House Bill 0042 for $9 million. The funding projects was defined in the 2015 Senate Enrolled Act number 0089, which Senate File 0057. We have a current budget request in the Joint Appropriations draft bill. It's numbered. I don't have the number at this point, but that was drafted in December 2018. The request was for fiscal year 20, $4.9 million. I know you guys were talking about that a little bit earlier. Proposed for additional security projects. For fiscal year 21 to 22, 10% of major maintenance for security has been discussed with the select committee to not be a part of the fiscal year 21-22. That's unlike the 10% enhancements funds. Continued 10% security major maintenance is not assured in the future. Overspending security funds may be a district concern if funding is not continued in the next biennium. And on the previous 10% security funding major maintenance in the 2016 House Enrolled Act number 0012 for fiscal year 17 to 18, included in the verbiage was a school district may expend up to 10% of the amount distributed under the major maintenance program for the period commencing July 1st, 2016 and ending July 1st, 2018 for safety and security building facility needs. Likewise, in the 2018 House Enrolled Act number 0062 for fiscal year 19 through 20, it's the same. A school district may expend up to 10% of the amount distributed under this program for the period commencing July 1st, 2018 and ending June 30th, 2020 for safety and security building and facility needs. District written requests for CAPCON funding revisions will be honored. Moving funds between project appropriations must be in writing and acknowledge no backfill funding. And the SFD will honor change agreements made by the SFD that are captured in a written record. The goal of security funding is intended to give each district an equal opportunity to provide consistent security standards for Wyoming K-12 schools, and this was included in the October 2014 report. The School Facilities Commission and Select Committee for School Facilities have continued to identify concern with the slow deployment of funds. Other potential funds available to the school districts that are not SFD administrated are as follows. Homeland Security funding. You need to contact your local Department of Homeland Security for available funds. DOJ and private grants are available on an irregular basis. Regular district searches are advised to see where those funds are and what's available. Past and present security conferences, October 2017 was our first one in Ramada Inn Convention Center in Casper. March of 2018, we had one at Central Wyoming College in Riverton. October 2018, we had one over at the Lerman County Community College here in Cheyenne. And for 2019, we're still looking at dates and locations for that, but that is part of our plan to do that. And you guys have been excellent as far as spending the security funds. You've only got one line item here that was identified for moss agate, and of course with a new modular, I don't know that you're going to have much issue with that. What's $1,009 left in your whole security fund. So you guys have been doing great. I'm using that all. Well, normally we ask, what can we do to help you take care of more? You guys have done a great job so far.
But it's still $1,009.
$1,009. That could be. You're kind of limited on what's been identified, and that's part of the restrictions that we have. The security monies on the first batch of the $9 million has to stay within those ones that were identified by the FEA. We can't go outside of that. We can't add projects. That's just what it is what it is. So.
I have a couple of topics to bring up on security with your permission. I don't know if now is the right time or not.
Can I have you do that after JJ's talks, and then we'll have you do that if that's okay. JJ's a very busy guy, and we got one of the questions here, and I asked JJ to come in, is I know that we had Tracy some struggle with 10% security and stuff, and so I know you two have talked quite a bit, and I just wanted JJ if you could address that and make sure that and I'll make some notes here based on your comments, but I want to make sure that we get that straightened out and everybody's on the same page.
So the major maintenance, the requests when the plan to work orders go in, it's a little bit confusing because the legislature authorized, so the commission had a rule, they could spend any color of major maintenance money on security related items, on those security components, the D7 group that's out there, okay? So when you submit a request, those security codes show up under all colors of major maintenance, regular, 10% enhancement, 8% money if you have that left. And then the 10% security was for 17, 18, 19, 20. You were allowed to use 10% of your major maintenance payment towards security related items. So that was a whole new balance that we had to start tracking in there. And where the confusion came in is, and what I found after, which one's Tracy?
I am.
Hi, Tracy.
Right.
I've never seen her. I've talked a million times.
Hey, we're sure we're not Tracy. So.
No, I know you're not.
That's the last time I checked.
So when you called, I was like, you were headed out to probably Wasbo down here, and and what I found was you were spending money on security related items, but they were not submitted under the 10%. They were approved under
Regular major maintenance.
They were approved under regular, because I went out and I searched all of CON01's planned work orders that were submitted under 10% security, and there's nothing. So you want to start using that money.
Right.
Exactly. And that was it. That was it.
So we thought we were doing that, but we weren't.
You weren't. Yeah, you were doing the security, because it's the same. I mean, like D7202, all of the security codes, they're all the same. You can just use them in those different buckets that are available out
So
there.
what the planned work orders were for regular major maintenance, you then submitted your 680, is that my understanding, with under the 10% security?
And probably where some of the confusion.
But you didn't need to because they qualified for
Under
it.
major
They
maintenance.
could have, yeah, they were approved under regular, but what I have, and probably where the confusion came in, is when they go in and they log their expenditures in the database, you specify on that external charge, you've done them a million times, what color of money that it is. Well, if you code an external charge to regular major maintenance money, and the work order that it was assigned to was approved for, say, 10% security, I have a script out there that it automatically fixes that, and that's probably where the confusion came in. You were submitting your external charges under the 10% security, and it was attached to a work order that was approved for regular. It automatically fixes those, and that's probably where. And I'm sure Raj ran into that probably when he was reconciling the 680 report for the last
Last year.
for the last fiscal year, and the system automatically fixed them, and because everything balanced, it was just they were off in the categories. When exactly. So they've got a full coffer of
there you go.
10% security money that, and when you go in and you select that maintenance, it's I think it's maintenance _ major _ like SECU.
No.
That's the 10%. I mean, and if you want to pull it up and show it to her, you can. That way she knows. And it's in the manual as well. So that's the 10% security money. So
that's like being at home on your personal budget and you realize that you made a mistake and it's like for $1,000 your benefit. Yeah, it's like
And just to reiterate, JJ, that's for all categories, all 20 that they can utilize that money
on
on.
the 10% security, as far as that, it's for any of the.
We can use it on any of
Security
those.
could be anything. It
Well,
does
yeah.
not have a.
No, 10%
only
security.
one.
I think there's something like 70 different. I mean, I know that the 9 million was for the first 8, right? That's the prioritized list you had pulled up. But the 10%, I think there's something like 70 or 80 different categories of security items that are out there. That 10% security can be used on any of those.
Yeah,
and it
but
doesn't
that-
have to qualify for major maintenance definition, right? So that money's really precious because when you start addressing security and it doesn't fall within major maintenance definition, that's when you want to use that, not before. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're good, Tracy?
Does that help with any of what you're?
It relates to what I want to show you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, the way I understood it was like it fills in the gaps where that other project money could not cover because it's so restricted in terms of what you need to use it. So if you're doing some big project and there's that outlier security thing that you need to add in there that's not already established or anything else, then that's when that 10% could fill in some of those gaps to help you out.
Okay.
But I would use it strategically. I wouldn't waste it on, if something goes regular major maintenance, then
Let it
tag
go
it
that way.
regular
If something
major
qualifies for
maintenance.
major maintenance, you might as well use
Use it there.
that.
And then
That makes sense.
not waste your definition
Does
on
Congress
another.
one have any 8% money left?
No.
You spent all yours.
They're
Good.
zero.
I'm glad.
Yeah, they're zeroed out. Yeah.
They spend all their money.
Good.
I don't know what the deal is.
I'm really good at that.
So, Dan, does this involve JJ as well?
No.
Your comments? So, JJ, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
JJ.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, it's always good to go to the horse's mouth,
Yeah.
and get it straightened out. And there's things that we can't answer, obviously, in planning. So, Dan,
Can I share something? It'll just take a minute. So
does it have to do with pictures?
I was Brent.
He's got graphics, he's an architect.
Person. So 2 years ago, I believe we did the security vestibules at both the middle school and they can share one. I want you guys to be able to see.
We can share.
We can share.
Yep.
I guess we're sharing.
We'll share.
So we did the security vestibules at both the middle school and the high school. And it was quite a bit more than the security money that they got. So they kicked in with their own funds to cover the rest.
We kicked in major maintenance paid for the rest.
I think both projects worked out very well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but the high school is a bit unusual because look at the size of the back parking lot. That's where all the students park and that's where activities often park. And so there's another main entrance. And we talked about a second security vestibule at the back door because it really is kind of a two-headed school with 2 entrances.
Is it going to cost less than $242,967.21?
Probably. This is a,
Promise.
that's a blow up of it. And
But that balance doesn't include our 18-19 money, does it? Or not, well, it would include 18-19, but not 19-20? No, it doesn't include 18-19.
This is
Right.
not including 18-19, or I'm sorry, 19-20.
Are you talking the 10% security? Yeah.
That's our balance as of June 30th, 18, right?
Right. And there is no more money.
There wasn't an allocation in July.
No, and so it's tied specifically to session law. It's not, the major maintenance calculation in state statute drives a certain amount. Session law says that out of the money generated through the major maintenance calculation, you can spend up to 10% security. It was, this never generated any money. It just allowed you to take a cut out of your major maintenance account to do it. And then what's happened is that, and that's why they were at least considering this it's actually 4.95 and new stuff. I think with the legislature, well, they recognize that what they're really doing is they're stealing from major maintenance. And so when you take this 242,000, you just reduced your regular major maintenance. I'm just telling you, you just reduced your regular major maintenance ability by almost $250,000. And so there's all of a sudden now, I mean, we're asking for more major maintenance for you guys to keep up, and they're diluting the major maintenance through their action. So what they decided to do is listen, and what we asked them to do is, hey, if you want the district to spend money, we're asking for capital requests and give them capital monies, and don't. And I know it was kind of a temporary. Let's help them get security in kind of almost an emergency way without appropriating more money. But at the same time, there's a negative impact on that. So I don't think you're going to see session law again drive that. That money's that money, and that's all you have. And that's why we put this little blurb down here that guys, make sure you track it, because there is no money that we know coming in the future that would refill that bucket. So keep track of it very closely and don't overexpend it. Did that answer? Okay.
And Brandon also provided me with session laws, and it shows it deploying money in 2017, 2018, but 19, it does not have that verbiage in the session laws to pull that money in your market.
So just to follow through with this then, real quick, when we did the security vestibules, it had a door position monitor system for the front doors. So we all know what access control is. You use a fob and you can get in and it's auditable, so you know who opened it with what fob. But the door position monitor tells you if the door is open or closed. So if a kid is like propping open a back door or a classroom door, you wouldn't know it. Because all we did was control those front doors, and we put in the front end system that's capable of handling the whole school. And that system can be installed on a wireless fashion. So it's easy. You don't need a bunch of conduit and wires and that sort of thing. And here I'm just highlighting all the exterior doors on the high school. It just shows how many potential entry points there are if someone were to prop a door open. So we master planned for that. We thought about doing it as a change order with Tanner back then, but we had already exceeded the funds, the security funds that were available. So we decided to just do it at the front door and master plan it for later. And it's the same situation at the middle school has the same type of security vestibule. And these are just the exterior doors at the middle school as well. So I'm just throwing out their potential security projects that we had talked about with the district in the past, just to see if there was any avenue or any appetite for pursuing those.
But the exterior doors, other than the main entry points, don't get covered underneath the security. So that's part of the problem. So you can handle that with door locks, but it's not part of the security system. So that's where you kind of get into the rub. It doesn't fall under the secure vestibule idea. So it's a little bit different.
It could be related to access control.
Yeah, we just have to make sure the verbiage matches
Sure.
up with what the project's.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you a question on this one, Deb. The suggested rear security vestibule, that's not adding any square footage, is it?
No.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure I understood.
There's a bump out. If you look at that floor plan, that's perfect. I mean, you could pop exterior windows in that space and you'd be looking right out at the parking lot, see people walking up. You have to reallocate that classroom to somewhere else was the one issue with that. But
Okay.
That's all I wanted to share.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate the information.
So I just said the district may want to address vestibule needs at the high school. It may use available 10% security major maintenance funds or regular major maintenance funds if qualifying to meet the need. If capital funds are available, such as out of this additional 4.95 or your $1,009 up there, the district needs to work with Bob Herzog to identify qualifying elements. Is that good?
Good. Were you going to say something on the access control?
Oh, I was just telling Tracy, the ones that we have access control on, I can see if they're open or not, but not all these other ones.
You can see with the access control system.
On my phone, on the app on my phone,
Oh,
I can.
yeah.
It tells me if it's open.
Does it send you a warrant or a
No, it doesn't.
notification? But
No,
at
and
least
if
you
I
can
went into
see
the
it.
settings, like it might pop something up, but I can pull it and it shows me every door that's propped open. But that's minute compared to what's on here.
The philosophy I've heard when we're doing a new school and people are contemplating fobs versus keys kind of thing, you have to go all fobs on all the doors, in my opinion, because if you have a key to the boiler room and a contractor has it, well, there's your breach in your whole system right there. So if you're going to do it, you may as well fob every exterior door if you're going to create a true perimeter.
I'll tell you, it's very difficult to change habits, and people prop doors open like you wouldn't believe. And you guys know that. It's just a constant training. But,
So what happens when electrical system goes down in the box?
They're battery powered.
yeah.
Good question.
Okay, anything else, Dan?
I've been following the newspaper articles that there might be additional security funds made available, and that's why we're just putting this on the table to see if there was an avenue to help the district get additional funds on top of that 247 or whatever it was.
So going back to the idea, and Bob, you may have clarified this already, but that additional, it's actually 4.95. It has to be tied to an element that already had generated some kind of. We're hoping that it's going to qualify for any of the 20. Not just the 8 that were previously. So that'll open it up, which districts had suggested that during the security conference in the past year. And then we're also, and then if you want to spend it on an element, but that element wasn't identified to generate any, as long as an element within the 20 has money tied to it that generated potential money, or money, as part of the secure or the overall capital liabilities the state may have in the future, it has to have that, because if it didn't generate money, then you can't just take money and apply it to it. You can't create a project if an element didn't generate a deficiency for future potential funds.
So I believe the security vestibule was not only part of the original 8, but it was the #1 priority of the original 8.
Yes. Now, in this case, if there was no vestibule, then I'm sure it probably
Secured
generated.
vestibule was number 6. Exterior door locks, not 1.
But you can work through Bob.
Yeah,
because
you can see on the list there, exterior door locks, classroom door locks, two-way communications, point of
Okay, you
entry.
busted me on that one.
No, it's not number 1, it's number 6.
But obviously, yeah. So you just have to make sure that whatever building you're talking about, which it looks like it,
I mean, in my mind,
has had a deficiency.
the vestibules we put in, I think, were very good, and we put the head in for the door monitoring position, so it's just following through on both of those projects at both schools to actually kind of complete that system. In my mind, it's more of a continuation of what we did a couple of years ago.
As long as we can fit it into the descriptions, that's all we gotta do. Well, they're very specific, and I have the unfortunate position of saying if it doesn't match up, I can't prove it. So,
Agreed.
so we just, like I said, we just have to all be careful about how we word it, what it is, and where it falls into the program.
So in other words, work with Bob hand in
Please.
hand and get it done.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Any other questions or comments on security? Okay, we will go down. So capacity, looking at capacity percentages, we do these on an annual basis and look what kind of numbers you guys have. Your Douglas Primary Elementary School is at 93.79. So that's probably the highest one there. You probably know that we look at district-wide capacity for the different grade configurations. So let's look at 2 things. I'm going to go first to this one here. So enrollment projections, I'm going to go right to your spreadsheet here, and just want to make sure everybody understands this, that what we do is we go 10 years trailing data in the past. These are all reported by WDE on the first sheet here. Every year we get from WDE from every school for every grade, and then it comes up with the total for each school, okay, by grade. So anyway, that data then is transferred to the next sheet, and then it shows per grade what your numbers are reported by WDE. We go 10 years in trailing data, and then with that known data, we project out about, give or take, 10 years into the future. Okay, so that's how those work. And then what happens is you can kind of follow, and now let me say something else. I've got 2 sheets here for you. We know that in the elementary, you're in town, because as you guys grow, because we hope you will continue to grow, and I know you do too. We're not including Dry Creek, Moss Agate, Shawnee, or Walker Creek, or what's the other one, White what?
White.
Oh, White, okay, White. That was too easy. White in there, and because they're not attending in-town schools, right? And if they do, they'll show up in the attendance, in the enrollment. So we leave them out, and this is an analysis of basically your grades K through 8, not including these. So that's one thing we do. And then did the same thing. We do district-wide for when we look at your 9th through 12th grade, we do district-wide. So that you make sure that we have the right numbers, because all those elementaries are going to feed your high school, right? So that's why we include all of them, including Moss Agate and all the rural ones in this one. Okay, so that's one thing we want to talk about. The next thing we want to talk about, and I know this may be basic, but it's important you to understand. So how these enrollment projections work is you're really tracking the survival rate. And it's so funny, I was up in Teton County about a month ago, and I was talking about survival rates between grades, and someone, they're like, they got all concerned because they're thinking, are you killing children? You know, it's like, no one's dying out there. It's a mathematical survival rate. It's how many students go from one grade to the next, and it's either increasing or decreasing. Okay, well, we got that one straightened out, so that was good. We can move forward. But what we do is we basically, you can track a class down in 2008. That kindergarten became a 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. So we really just stair-stepping it down, clear through 12th grade on the other one. And then what we do is, the survival rate actually from kindergarten to 1st grade, we just do 2008 kindergarten, 2009 1st grade, 2009 kindergarten, 2010 1st grade, and we do those, and we average those 10 years of trailing data, and we come up with a percentage. Okay, over here. So from kindergarten to 1st grade, you guys have a survival rate, 88% over the last 10 years. Your survival rate from students going from kindergarten to 1st grade is 88%. Well, that's usually explained in 2 ways. Number one is districts usually have, not always, a kindergarten program that if they're not developmentally ready to go on to 1st grade, those students are then being delayed, okay, in going into 1st grade, at least potentially there. And then the other one is sometimes you do have migration out of the district, and that can impact that as well. So Paige, you know your district. Does that pretty well cover the?
It's retention. But we have a new policy now, so we'll see if that changes your numbers, Troy.
Okay, cool.
So that's move up. What about move in? What about 5,000 new oil and gas leases in Converse County?
Yeah, well, it'll show eventually. And you well know, and Dan and I've had this conversation multiple times. Okay? the state is not proactive; it's reactive in some ways. We don't have enough money to be proactive and say, oh man, you guys might grow another 100 students, so we're going to give you another $3 million next year. It's always, let's see what happens, and then we'll respond to what happened. But when we do that, we'll respond in a projection that says, once we act, we anticipate what that trend is, and we'll design in such a way that is sufficient for the long run, not just short run. So if that makes sense. Okay, so that's what survival rates are, and then you guys back in 2nd grade go up to 98, and then you guys pretty well, you gain some students here, you lose just a few, gain, and so on. So if I go over here, let's go back to the district one now that we get the concept. And let's go district-wide. This would be a little more accurate, district-wide. So you can kind of see, and you keep gaining students. The only time you lose students, just a few students here, is your junior year. But I'm just telling you right now, this is phenomenal for a school district to have a senior year that is above 100%. And I'm guessing that you may be getting students from Casper or something that are coming out. This is pretty rare. So I don't know if toward the end of, I don't know. I'm just saying that's pretty rare. You usually have a substantial loss out of the sophomore and junior years, and then you kind of try to have a rebound there in the senior year. But you guys are really quite stable. Alrighty, and then this is always interesting. I don't know if you had a bumper crop one year or whatever on your, like this last year on your birth rates. or just students moving in. But your average over the last 10 years has been what? I have an average of 148. You guys had 161 this last year. Sometimes you're lower, sometimes you're higher. But for the most part, you guys are pretty consistent. Nothing great happening there. We recognize, we know, and of course you know, that every student's worth about 15,000 apiece, a student. So when a small district loses 5 students, that's serious. It could easily be a teaching position or something like that. If you gain, but you guys gained this last year 12 students, that's great. More resources, monetary resources and stuff. We were just talking to, what was it, Sublet 9 that lost 150 students in the last 2 years. Can you imagine? How'd you like to be Amy and put together that budget? So anyway, any other thoughts there? And we probably talked a lot more of what you didn't want to talk about, but I think it's good to have the discussion.
So with our primary being at 93% capacity, and talking with Tanya, our primary principal, you know, they're looking at having another 150, 160 kindergartners coming in. That's going to put us above capacity, but we have to maintain that for the year before we can start talking about a new primary school.
Okay. You're thinking big picture, and I like it. And here's the answer to that. Let's look down here. And let me talk about this, and then I'm going to go to one other thing to answer your question. So statewide capacity, we always track it, right? And statewide capacity is really important. So where am I at here? Am I missing you guys?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not. I don't think I am.
We have a 90 to 95 and there's no.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so I think, let me go back to that, guys. I may not have the answer to that and at the immediate moment here.
93.
Oh, yeah. So you've got a K1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so when we do enrollment projections and do the we do it district wide. So we do it in K6, and because you have room like in your, well, let's 2-3. See right here you have what, about 90 available seats in 2-3. Mm-hmm. In your 4-5 you have 100 and whatever it is, 104 seats available. Mm-hmm. So state statute requires us and you to look at non-construction alternatives such as boundary changes, such as do you need to do grade configuration changes, do you need to do busing changes, whatever it is. And so the commission is unable to ask for capital funds unless other non-construction alternatives have been explored and exhausted and are not available. And what that does is protects the state from overcommitting capital funds when there are other internal choices that the district can make to satisfy or meet a capacity need without costing the state money.
So if I'm understanding, so you're looking at, okay, we're getting close to capacity at primary. Can we put a grade in another school that's got more seats?
A configuration, yeah, maybe do that as a kindergarten and then move those second grades to your, or first grade, maybe you do a 2-3, or maybe you do and maybe you go to still a 2 or a first, second, maybe move the third up to a 4th through 6th. Yep, that's required. So that's why you didn't show up on this, because from a district-wide point of view, you did not. There is no other options for you. Okay.
So Troy, let's think about that for a second. So a way for us to kind of figure on that, I think, is if we're going to get 2 classes of 155 or 160, and we project that out, then obviously a year from now, our second grade will have that. And a year from then, and so that will change all those capacity numbers, because we'll be closer once those larger classes get up there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as those larger classes start moving through, it's going to increase your capacity percentage, because you're going to start filling all your schools, and as we look across those schools, we're going to be able to do that calculation, and so it'll drive it up on this list eventually, if you keep growing.
But
So we would have to shuffle a primary grade up to another school.
Well, you don't have to do anything. You have the choice. I mean, you have the freedom. You can say, hey, listen, we're going to stay at, well, take Jackson. Jackson had 2 or 3 elementaries. 2. At least 2, if not 3 elementaries. And so what they ended up doing is they had like 130% in an elementary. And they decided to keep those students in that elementary. They also had modulars and everything else. But they didn't have a lot of room anywhere else. So they would have replicated the capacity issue somewhere else. But guys, it's not something you have to do. It's your choice. But let's say here in Laramie 1, we have elementary schools in Laramie 1 here who are over 100%. Okay. And the districts looked at us and they've said, well, what are you going to do about it? We're going to say, well, see that elementary at 75%? Okay, you have choices, but that's your choice. If you don't want to change your boundaries, don't want to change your buses, and you want to keep the primary as a primary, you keep the primary. It's your school district. All we say is, hey, overall, you've got room, and by state statute, you need to figure it out. And if you want to keep over capacity, you can. If you don't, and so you start exploring whatever's best for your district and your choices until money comes to address capacity, when and if it does.
Can I comment on that? So on Laramie 1, you've got the capacities identified by triad.
Mm-hmm.
So you have broken up the district instead of taking it. You've also taken it as a total district, but you've allowed them to break up the capacity by triad. And it seems like we ought to be looking at the capacity by facility, because I know you're looking at K6, but it's a little unreasonable to say, let's take the whole first grade and move them up into the other facilities, in my opinion. And the primary school is their worst facility, the one that needs to be replaced. And that was in the master plan that we submitted last year. You know, looking at that, is there any way to look at the primary capacity unto itself and not water it down with the available capacity in the other grades?
Yes, if you were a rural school. So if you have a rural school that it's unrealistic or dangerous or crazy to be transferring those students between different schools, then we would say we will treat that school as an individual school because of the circumstances for student safety and cost of transportation and everything else.
Well, it's a 2-grade school, so you'd be taking half the school if you wanted to take a whole grade. And if not, then you're taking just selected members of the first grade, moving it up. So now you're splitting a grade level, which from an educational standpoint, I'm not an educator, but that would be kind of awkward.
Where are the schools located within the town?
So primary is
By the high
right
school.
next to the high school.
Okay.
And then
I'm putting it to
which seats?
and then the next 2
Are together.
elementary are together, but they're really on the western side of town, where this is more on the eastern side.
And I know this would be a nightmare for a superintendent, but you still have the option of going back to a traditional K through 6 and splitting towards those districts too, or the areas, right?
I don't think,
It would be hard. It would.
yeah,
there would
I
be a
don't think
lot
we
of
could do
things.
that, Amber, just because that school is way too small.
Yeah.
It'll only house.
Yeah, there you
But
That's
that's the
number
thing,
of
is
students.
balancing it out across your town and looking at different options, even more than just a 1 grade movement from one building to the other. Outside the box, but at the same time, within the boxes you have.
But it's sizes of kids too. I mean, a kindergarten and first grade bathroom is a little different than a 5th grade
Right.
bathroom. And they were built to house those ages of students.
Yeah, and there's some districts that are also having to look at possible remodels of some of their schools just to accommodate those too.
I thought remodel was this word, Amber.
I don't
There
know.
can be no remodel.
in major maintenance.
Well, not major maintenance, but if you're trying.
Capcom.
You know where we start getting nervous about that? We start making presentations to the legislature. It's like, hey, remodel is here, and they're like, hold on, I thought we provided capital funds for renovations. Yeah. And all of a sudden, so that's when, and then they're so broad, and then when we give that data to a condition assessment team, what does that tell them? What components was that money spent on? Windows? Was it, or remodels? Like, who knows? So anyway, that's where we changed it, and that is a bad word.
I've learned that, Troy. I listened to you.
Don't listen to me. So anyway, does that make sense? And with regard to Laramie 1, the reason we do triads, it's complementary, and it's kind to them. They do triads, and so we allow them to look, and we actually put that data in there for them to look at those triads. That's information to help them change their boundaries. It doesn't force the state to restrict, because state statute requires us that we do look at capacity state district wide for grade configurations.
One last word on that. The master plan was looking at it from a facility condition standpoint of taking the two of the worst buildings in the district, major maintenance costs, operational
You're
costs.
talking Douglas, right?
Yeah, okay. Get rid of both of those, do an addition onto the newest building on campus, create a K-6 campus, and you'd wipe a bunch of old crappy square foot off the books and have a much more efficient operation. And I thought maybe this increased kindergarten population might be a way to kind of push that thought forward into an MCER, or it would hit the capacity list if it was looked at as an individual school.
Yeah, we're in a different world now. Rules and regs.
Am I in the wrong world?
Yeah, this is old school here.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not what our present rules and regs, updated rules and regs, which districts had input in and had very strong feelings about. And they wanted educational suitability, which is required by state law, by the way, to be put into the prioritization of capital funds. What happened was, we were doing a capacity list and making recommendations to the commission, which made recommendations to the select committee. But just like this, we made a condition list, made recommendations based on that condition list, and then that was forwarded through. And when capital monies came, they dealt with educational suitability simultaneously when those capital projects were driven, as you well know. Now, the real world is this. Right down here, which we were going to talk about later, but we'll talk right now. So the rules and regs basically say this: every building in the state of Wyoming is going to have which you already know, but we'll talk about it anyway. Every building in the state of Wyoming will have a score, and that score will be based on 3 criteria. One of them is condition, and it's going to weight 50% of the score, 35% for capacity, and 15% for educational suitability. Those will be rolled up to a composite score that will be the score for that building. And this does abide by a state statute, but all of a sudden, what it does is one of the challenges, and this is what state law requires us to do, so we don't really have a choice. One of the challenges is, all of a sudden, let's say you were up here and your district was up at above 100%, like these schools, these districts in certain grade configurations. All of a sudden, that 110%, 0.68 for Afton, Osmond, and Lincoln too, okay, that's only 35% of the weight in that building. So they may get up to 180%, and it will never come, perhaps because of the condition of their building, it will not rise to the top of that list.
So it's not just going to go off capacity, it's going off suitability and condition scores.
Yep, that's right.
Well, that's okay for us.
It is, because that primary would score high in both of those other categories as well.
So that'll be very interesting. And we don't know what that's going to look like.
2021, does that rise when they're starting?
Was that 50%?
50, 30, 20?
50, 35,
Yep.
15. Don't mess with me. This is a Thursday. It's a Thursday.
Not good with numbers.
50, 35, 15.
Okay. Okay.
Good? Okay. So.
He asked a question about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That starts, did you say 2021 is when they're going to start that, basing that new school and stuff off of that?
The percentage.
The percentage?
Percentages?
Yeah.
How about May?
Okay.
Yep. And so there are going to be 3 options here, guys, and we've been talking about it internally. And it's not solidified yet, but our rules and regs say this is the new rule. This is the new world we're in. Okay. In the past, we've had and I think under Bill Panos, maybe Kendari, I don't know. It's been too long. One of those directors back there, because we've had so many of them, basically combined these three in 2010 and presented it. And guess what? The select committee kicked it out. So we're going to present, I mean, to my knowledge, we're going to probably present this matrix, but then we're also know that it has some shortcomings because now it has 2010's educational suitability data that's 8 years, 9 years old.
Topic of debate was how do we judge that educational suitability?
Yeah, that educational, it's been every building, back then, every educational building was already assessed with educational suitability. We have numbers. However, guess what? A lot of buildings have been remodeled, renovated, and major maintenance has been spent on them. There's new buildings that aren't even in there, which you hope were educationally suitable, right? What score are they going to get? Probably 0. So we're going to present that. The other possibility then is the legislature say, well, thanks for presenting that, and so why don't we give you some money? You go out and you figure out the educational suitability, and maybe there's a better way. Skin the cat here, and you guys update the educational suitability tool, do a process that involves the district so that they have ownership to how that's developed. How would you like in your school district? How many principals do you have?
6.
6? Yes.
And plus Chad, plus rural.
Okay.
6 town, 1 country.
1 country. Okay, great. And then Paige will tell you right now that all 6 plus the 1 all agree on what educational suitability is. Yeah. No. Right? And every time you get a new principal in a new building, they will define educational suitability different. So a model, a tool, something has to be developed. Now, and I'm just talking philosophically here. So in an ideal world, wouldn't it be great? And I keep saying this, and I don't know. Wouldn't it be great if there was kind of an educational suitability calculator, just like major maintenance, and it produced an X number of dollars for educational suitability per district based on, let's say 80 M. And wouldn't it be great, and this is just me, so it might not be great. I think it might be great that then those monies would go to you, and you would be still confined to certain work codes for what you do. Physical, you can't throw it toward education. You see what I'm saying? Delivery. It has to be physical environment oriented. Wouldn't it be great if you could code that and your school board and administration, everybody could decide what's the most important thing in your district to address with those monies. I think we've talked about this before. I don't know if it'll ever happen because I don't know if it's tied with it the accountability that a legislature would demand or want for the money they put out. But anyway, something's going to be developed, and I'm sure we're going to have stakeholders involved, and they're going to be called school districts because we'd be insane to do it by ourselves. So someone's going to have to come up with this educational suitability thing. But right now we have a tool. We're going to use it. It's not perfect. It has shortfalls, and that's the only thing we have to go forward with. All right. All right. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to point out, that's kind of a long discussion. Am I being too detailed for you? You guys good? Okay. So another part of this discussion is really important, and that is the fact that this list didn't look like this last year, if you recall right. There was only like one high one on there. So what happened was, commission said, hey, restricted capacity up to 25 students in K3. Okay, districts came back and they pushed back hard. Okay, so what did the commission do? They said, we renege that. We'll go back to the restricted capacity of 16, which is not mandated by state statute to match the funding model for 16:1. So don't get confused. It's not 16:1. It's just restricted capacity of 16. You can do what you want in your rooms, as many students or teachers as you want. But what happened then is it pushed all these. Afton was already up there, right? It pushed all these K5s, K6. All these were pushed up into the high, and these have been growing anyway, so they were coming up anyway. So anyway, this one's kind of a misnomer in a way because Casper's 300 seats short, but they just got done mothballing 4 schools they're in fairly good shape, and they have 900 seats available. So as a non-construction alternative, even though it says that, and we put it there because that's what the calculation says, they have 900 and some seats available, and other schools are just sitting there empty, but could be occupied if they want to. All right, medium, low. All right. So I just said you have sufficient capacity right now for your enrolled students. That was only like a 45-minute talk in one little sentence to summarize it. Okay. Charter schools, you don't have any. That was good. You guys know about FCI's Facility Condition Index. You know what they mean. The higher the number, the more deferred maintenance to the building, and which means it drives it up higher on the list. This is the educational buildings for FCI scores. Look at their EWC. So I've made a note down here. We've already talked about that. That is going to the commission here, and thank you.
And Troy, thanks for that. I know Shelley needed that like the day or something before, but our board met. Mitch, we couldn't get it to you because.
Board met the day after.
Right.
When
so we were a couple days off on our timelines, but appreciate that.
Yeah, I survived the backlash. She wasn't mad. She's but it's just like you, right? I mean, you have a board meeting, you know this, and you're welcome. But you have a board meeting and someone says, you know, the day after it's supposed to be, you know, you're
right.
like, can you throw that on there? It's like, oh my word, okay. Anyway, so no problem, guys. It's an easy fix. I'm going to be sending that. Do you want me to send it to the two of you once I get the summary sheet, or one of you?
And Troy, Mitch will be there. Do you need Tracy and me to be there or anything? Mitch thought probably not.
No.
No, that's what he said too.
No. If you were
made
on
us feel sort of not wanted, but it was okay.
If you were on if you're on the capacity list and you were showing a high capacity or medium or low, there might be some questions. That's not an issue here. It's not some flag. So in my opinion, no.
Okay.
So, but I've been wrong before. Right? Okay, so anyway, I just made sure that we know that. So anyway, this is just page one of, out of 400 some educational buildings. Now the interesting, the interesting thing is here's the ancillary buildings, right? The support buildings, that are like bus barns, storage, not storage, but what am I trying to say? Warehouses and admin and maintenance. So there's this one that you guys aren't on. But the ancillary ones are really interesting because state statute requires that the commission put together recommendations and prioritize educational buildings first and foremost for capital fund requests, and then ancillary buildings second. Well, I mean, how much money do we have in the state of Wyoming, and how are we going to? So the bottom line with ancillary is take care of them well with your major maintenance, because we don't see any capital money coming, and it could, but we just don't see that. And I think you guys would probably be upset if all of a sudden we're doing, 3 buildings here, and yet your building is top of the condition list. You probably would want something solved. Okay, there's that one again, right? Here's your ancillary buildings in your districts. I just put only your buildings in these lists. I say me, someone did. I did say that you guys will come before the commission in March to request sale of the EWC. I'll put that together here, and hopefully next 4 or 5 days and send it out. You guys can turn that around and let me know if you have any recommendations. We always like you to see what we're doing and have input so that there's no surprises for you. Major maintenance, it's important that we look at that. You guys updated your work order statuses, which is important in the AIM database, house cleaning stuff, and then whatever major maintenance requests you did make through work orders, Bob's looked at them. If they have qualified, they're approved. If not, they're not.
I've got some old ones here I'd like to go through, some date back to 2017, and see if we can clear up that list.
We cleaned out quite a few of them.
Okay, again, I got 7 listed here that may date back to 2017, so if we can, they're in the deferred list for you guys to take a look at, so we would appreciate that.
Yep.
Yeah, we went through, what was it, 15 pages of them,
Okay.
and I did, so.
Great.
And in the past, they were state statute required a 5-year facility plan.
Yeah.
And so everybody was shooting out here with 5 years of major maintenance. It's hard to determine what you're going to do 2 years down the road sometimes. Right. So that's when we started counseling districts and going, hey, don't shoot out 5. And once that changed the state statute, don't go out that five years, because then they were just shuffling and shuffling. It's like, that was our priority today, but then next year, all of a sudden, it's like, that isn't, let's, so cleaning up is important. Okay. You guys do not have, you guys know that enhanced, 10% enhanced is a category within it, within the major maintenance calculation. It does not generate money. It's only a category that can be part of the expenditures out of that. You guys have 161,000. That does, we were talking to someone who's been around forever yesterday. I thought it was CON01 or something, Jesse Martinez. And we were talking about, hey guys, this is for things that don't necessarily, they don't qualify as a building to be on the inventory for state money. So teacherages, spend 10% on if you want. Field lights to a sports field, So those are the things that these guys can answer as PMs. But that's an important resource for you, and it's a good one to use when you need it. Okay. This is just illustrative in this facility plan of last year's priorities that you had. Secured vestibules down to the least expenditure, which is institutional equipment, $203. Back when Ken Burnett was here, you didn't know Ken Burnett.
No,
you knew Ken Burnett. And Ken Burnett's like, Troy, because I was a facilities director, you will not submit anything under $500, period. He wouldn't accept anything under 500. So you guys are getting away with murder. But anyway, this is just illustrative. You don't have to defend what you've done. And this is just building by building breakdown. This is really important. I feel bad, guys, because I do so much talking, but you're being gracious, so thank you. Low condition scores are really important, because every year we have legislators kind of looking at us and going, are those school districts spending money on their highest needs, their lowest scores? And we're not there to lobby on your behalf, but we are here to enable you to communicate with your legislators. So what we start doing is, hey, here's the 2s, here's your low scores. You guys speak for yourselves. And if this ends up in some legislator's hands, what the quality of your work is and how you communicate is your business. You represent your district. So that's what we've done. And you guys, and thank you for looking things, and you're saying, hey, we think we're going to address it this way, and thanks for doing that. And we'll just go on.
And Troy, to go back to that, so we do have a 5-year plan, but we don't have what you say attached to. So it doesn't have like every work order and thing. It just has it, Mitch has it planned out. And I think you guys know it's based on that needs assessment that Dano and his team did. Like going on 2 years ago now. And so we did that 5-year plan, which we shared with you last year. Well, then when Mitch came, exactly as you said, happened. So a couple of, things happen and they have to go in there. And then we looked at certain things and a couple priorities changed. But it's really good for us to look at things like this so we can do just what you said. So Douglas Primary School windows, those are in Mitch's plan. And so that's why Tracy put up there, it's completed included in the completed 5-year plan. And we will do that. So we're not just not addressing them or working on them. And we're right in the middle of that high school project. And all those Shawnees hopefully will go away. We get our new little Shawnees. So maybe your list will squeeze down a little bit.
I hope so. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So next thing is the next condition assessment. There's several things I want to point out here that are important. This fall, we're going to be putting together a scope and hiring a professional to go out and do the assessment statewide. It's over 500 buildings that are done. So that's a very important part, and state statute requires us to do it every 4 years. Training, and I think, we're going to have training. It's not April 1st, but it will be in April for districts. It'll be 4 hours, probably in Casper, and it'll go right through 4 hours of the consultants that stand there and go, here's our tool, here's how we use it, this is what it means, this is how we score, this is the data we collect, and by the way, we want you to know exactly how it works. You don't score it, I don't score it, they score it. The important part is that you give them good information. And so we've had school districts in the past, here's the keys, there they are. Have fun. When you're done, Sester, bring them back. And who knows, we might even go out to lunch. And so that's a bad way to do it, because who knows your buildings? You do. And so whoever's most qualified should walk with them, be with them, live with them for 2-3 days as they're going through their schools, and make sure they get all the accurate information, because they're going to base their scores on that accurate or lack thereof, right? That's one thing. The other thing is where the 680 comes in, extremely important, is all the things you do, whether it's capital money, component, or major maintenance, security, all that comes back in and is in our database, and we run off reports of expenditures since the last assessment, and we give them per building what the expenditure's been and what systems they've spent it on, and that helps them a lot, because sometimes we do have new individuals come into districts who are doing facilities, and they don't know it as well as someone who had been there 20 years, which you guys had someone there forever. What was his name?
Barry Boyce.
Very Boise.
Yeah, Barry. I remember, man, I mean, that was a while ago. Anyway, and Barry took me and mentored me, by the way. He was a really good guy, and I went up and talked to him when I first became facilities director. Anyway, so that's important, and that helps you also, because then you'll see the numbers also with regard to historically what it's spent, and it's a good process. So please come to that. And then I think the other thing that we've had complaints about the school district and school districts, but we can't control it unless we wanted to double our costs for assessments, because the assessments statewide cost about $2.5 million, give or take. And if we wanted to pay $5 million, we could probably have them do it in 2.5 months. Okay, and have who knows how many teams out there flying, right? And that's your busiest time of the year, by the way, in facilities. So we will start assessments in the spring a little bit before school gets out, and we'll go through the summer. We'll maximize 2.5 months, and then we'll use the fall to clean up. Sorry, it's just the way life is, and hope you don't get too upset with us, but it's limitations of funds. There you guys are on the component list. So this is really important one I want to talk to you about, Paige, because I think it's really important. Guys, this is obviously you guys, if you don't know, there were 12 district representatives that value these things. There's a very specific matrix process they go through to submit component projects. Component projects are to supplement major maintenance when major maintenance is short. So they're a really important part of this. Notice that there were 31 requests and $39 million worth of requests. You guys were numbers 5, 8, 10, and 12. Now the important thing about this is, and we did show this to the commission last week. You were there, and they didn't approve it. It was an informational item that said, here's the list. Here's what the committee of 4 superintendents, give or take, 4 facility directors, 4 business managers did. And so it's a good process. But the important thing is, if they follow this, which I assume they will, but look at where the legislature needs to fund for you to get this done, this high school. They have to at least do a little over 12 million for you to qualify. If they do 6 million, it's number 4, they'd have to go up to 12 million. So we can't go to bat with you guys to legislate. We're an agency, right? We cannot solicit for you. We cannot barter for you. We cannot, I always forget the name. Lobby for you. Thank you.
Is there any gut feel on how far down the list they have funds available for?
They're resisting this.
They've never done more than 10, right?
20 one year.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's because Cary Junior High School is being fought over. They split it, said 20, and everybody like high fives, man. All the other districts, because they actually got some component money. 20 is the highest.
Hasn't there been a greater emphasis on asset preservation?
There has. And so what we've been asking for is more major maintenance, okay? Because we have a study to show that we need more. You need more major maintenance, and as that increases, the need of this should decrease if school districts have sufficient major maintenance. Well, that's not necessarily happening as much as perhaps districts would like. So we don't know. Some years they haven't approved anything on component. Some years they've approved that 20 million. That was a rare occasion, but the average is like 4 or 5, to be honest with you, from a biennium. So
Troy, talk me through the exact process. So you showed it to the commission as information, then it'll tell me exactly what happens. Then
What happens now is that we're going through the facility planning process with all 40 school districts. As we speak, we are putting together potential budgetary items, including this list. So what's important here is that our director works with the governor's office and legislative leadership to kind of discuss a potential proposed amount for budget categories. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And of course, we provide information in those categories that can inform them and empower them with what the requests or demands or needs may be or wants. But ultimately, there is a cooperation between our agency and other government authorities to kind of come up with some recommended categorical budget request amounts. Have I communicated?
Yep.
Okay. I can only go so far in my communication on that. But it's important that, I mean, I can say this, it's important that you work with your local legislators to help them understand your needs and where you are on a certain list, and to understand why that's an important need for you to be met, and for them to clearly get that so that when and if they're involved in that process, they may have an influence at helping represent you as your legislator. Okay?
So the SFC will eventually approve this list.
They will not approve this list. They will approve a budget recommendations based on this list, as well as a bunch
So
of
you
other
just show them this, and then
Yep.
you guys roll it into what you're gonna
Yep.
have them approve as your whole budget.
Yeah, in the past, it'll be, okay, how much capital funding, how much major maintenance, how much for component requests.
Okay.
Usually we get this idea of, hey, you can go 200 million down and no more. Now what's going to fill that 200 million? Well, major maintenance is probably number one. That's a no. So now how much more money for capital? What's on the highest priority needs there? What makes sense? So it's going to be categorical directions or recommendations that will end up eventually to the governor's office and to the select committee and the commission.
And this is every 2 years, this process for the component funding?
Correct. We used to do it every 1 year. So I'm happy to say it's only every 2 years.
What's the deadline for the next submittal?
They will have like from January 2020 to September 2020. And that'll lead into the 23-24 biennial budget. Okay? All right. Okay, I don't think I have any more. Let's see, this was all major maintenance. Sometimes I put stuff there. Okay. So I think what I'll do here is I'll just say that got something generic there, but I hate. Okay, we're going to talk about these in just a moment, your component projects, a little more in the budget. All right. Do we need a break? Or are we doing okay?
Good. Doing good.
Okay. Usually Brandon's here to explain this, since he's following this whole process, but if it's red, it's dead, and if it's green, it's alive. It's a go. Okay.
So
We did have a major maintenance. We wanted a 2% of CRV, current replacement value, up to 2.5. It failed. So we were hoping you guys would get that, but it didn't work. What happens is we know that you guys through WASBO or WASA, I don't know the difference. Is it WASA?
WASBO's business managers,
and WASA's.
WASA's superintendents.
So anyway, but I'm thinking on the is it through the WASBO site that you have a tracking, or is it through the WASA?
Through the school board.
Through WSBA.
Oh, WS. Okay. Okay. WASBA. WASBA.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, you have some representation and someone's helping you track all the things that affect education in the bills every day, and they change every day. So last year we just kind of, and it was Brandon's idea, and I think it was really good. And some of these things are still also tracked under that process for you educationally, but some of the things aren't. So that's why we bring this up. So we're going to walk through this real quick. And so if it's already been talked about on your side, sorry. House Bill 52, Public Works Contracts. That's based, and some of these, by the way, this was last Friday. 4 days in the legislative process is like an eternity. So it could easily be different. This is just dated last Friday. House Bill 52, Public Works and Contracts. Basically what it's saying is architects, when they write specifications, are to do it for products and to be available for Wyoming resident suppliers. So what this bill is really saying is the state of Wyoming has state money and it wants state money to stay in the state. That's what it's saying. So that will be, if it passes, that will be a legislative requirement of architects. House Bill 65, procurement amendments. We had municipalities, city or counties, we had state agencies, school districts, Santa Claus. Everybody was doing something different when it came to procurement. State statute had different things, saying different things to different entities. So what happened is we were able to get a stakeholders a group that represents districts and the Wyoming Contract Association and contractors and all this stuff, architects. And we were able to basically, they were able to make some common sense changes to all these statutes. To number one is unify them so they say the same thing. So there's not different responsibilities or requirements for one entity than another using state funds. That's one thing. The other thing is that a lot of the bonding and the you know, when do you have to go out if you're hiring a design professional? When do you have to get three requests or responses to your proposals? When do you have to go out and advertise? Those were all based on, some of those were 35, 40, 50 years old, those numbers. So it was ridiculous. I mean, who at 7,500, you can't breathe less than 7,500. So you can see here that a lot of the numbers have increased, and you know, all advertising shall be a minimum of 2 weeks. So just harmonized all those laws and made a lot more common sense and updated them. House Bill 78, education major maintenance funding. Districts have just complained about like crazy on this. It's already approved. It's already signed by the governor. You're going to get quarterly payments starting in 2020. So I can tell you why, but it won't make you feel better. So
I sat through the why.
okay.
I was there for that.
So you guys spoke for yourselves, and that's what happened, and there it is. House Bill 79, School Finance Interfund. This is interfund loans may be made to the school account. So I think it's just out of the reserve account. It's just keeping money flowing and having enough money to pay the bills is my interpretation. House Bill 94, Construction Contracts, Indemnity Provisions. Paul does a really good explanation of this, and I won't do it because I'm not an architect, but it's limiting the enforceability of indemnity. So it's really, what it's really doing is, listen, if the contract's between two, leave responsibility at the appropriate place within a contract where it says the responsibility is. And state, we shouldn't be drug into these things when bonding covers it or other things within the contract cover a dispute of what's going on. That should be between the contracting parties, and indemnity should remain to the responsible parties, and parties that aren't responsible shouldn't have to be forced to jump in to make some remedy or solution to the issue. Contractor final payments, modifying final. I think some contractors weren't getting paid because of perhaps less defensible reasons for the final payment. So this makes it a little more clear that, you know what, unless there's something really supported in that contract, you better pay the final payment, you better move on. House Bill 152, Wyoming Underground Facilities, you're supposed to call and then dig. Most people dig and then call after they hit something. This just ups the ante of the fact that architects and engineers are to actually put into their documents and stuff that yeah, you are to call before you dig, and that's actually in the architectural and engineering documents. And also the penalty, I think, went up to, do you know how much that was? It went up substantial.
Yeah, it was.
It's not just a little.
It used to be like $500, now it's gone up to.
Yeah, it's no longer a slap on the hand. It's more substantial. This is interesting. You might care less about this, but it's really interesting. Private schools in Jackson, there was a I don't know if it's a charter school or private school, but basically they bought a piece of property and they want to build on that piece of property. But what the county came in and they said, hey, the zoning laws for you should be the same as any other private entity. And so they didn't have enough land to build a school large enough or appropriate enough to meet the needs of the school on the zoning requirements from that county. So someone from the private school got involved and got their legislator to sponsor a bill. And it basically says that private schools across state, when they want to do something on land, would be under the same freedom, you might say, as public schools when it comes to zoning authority. Government contracts, state file or Senate file 53. Basically, you can't put in a contract labor organization requirements. That has to stay out of contracts. And it shouldn't become part of the contractual obligation of someone signing that, forcing certain labor organization rules or requirements within the contract. Senate File 57, public records. This kind of ups the ante. You guys get public record requests. And you better come through a little more. At one time, it was like a felony within this. I mean, they were going to throw you in jail and throw the key away, you know. And so it's come way down. So if it survives, though, it will up that, and we'll all be responsible for providing that in a timely manner. Senate File 64, school safety and security. I was thinking someone said this failed yesterday, so I think we're good there. SJ 001, federal school lands. Oh, this is an interesting one because there are landlocked state lands that they're not really getting the revenues off of them for grazing and stuff. And those revenues go towards schools, help funding schools. So what they're trying to do is trade lands with the federal government and bring those out to a place where they can actually generate revenue off of it and help school districts. So I thought that was kind of cool. Senate File 103, state capital construction. This is it's an interesting one. So several years ago, as you well know, the school facilities and the construction management were merged into the state construction department. So now we have what the SFD and the CM are now become the SCD, and then the CM reports to the SBC, which is the State Building Commission, and we report to the SFC, which is the School Facilities Commission, and then we go to a select committee, and then which is the Select Committee on School Facilities, and then the State Building Commission, which is chaired by the governor, goes to the Joint Appropriations Commission. So what they're doing is they're proposing a super committee. And so what's going to happen is the construction management is going to still go through the State Building Commission, but their recommendations are going to go up to a super committee, which is the Select Committee on state buildings and school facilities. So this is probably going to be the who's of the legislature on this committee, and then they're going to look at school district capital requests and facility requests, and they're going to look at state agency and state buildings needs, and it's all going to go through one single committee before it goes to joint appropriations.
So they consolidated the select committees into one.
There was no select committee for the state side, and it just went right to joint appropriations. Now it creates that where it's got the who's looking at it before it ever goes to joint appropriation. Yeah. So super committee, kind of interesting. 2-day meeting instead of one. Okay. These died. Last thing I think we'll talk about is these two. There is, at least as far as we know so far, there's a House Bill 1 and a Senate File 1, and these have the actual appropriation requests for capital monies and stuff in them. And so there's two versions on both sides, and so we don't know exactly what that means, but we can say that these things here that were in the budget for $33 million are still there. Satellite High School in Sweetwater 1 and in Rock Springs, the alternative school in Sheridan. Oh, look at there. Some modular. It's actually kind of exciting. I've done this 30 times with other school districts, and now the actual school district effects. There it is. It's pretty exciting. So congratulations so far. It's in there to reappropriate. Doesn't cost state any more money. It just allows you to use those monies. The charter schools, if charter schools are leasing, there's one in Albany County and one in here, Laramie 1. We are required to make appropriation requests for the leases. Those are in there. Unanticipated monies are based on the major capital, and all it is a percentage thereof. Just in case something goes south, there's the other monies to ask if unanticipated happens. Security projects, 4.95. Major maintenance, I never can remember what it's called. The square foot, cost per square foot, the RS means value. RS means was updated this year, and in the past, they didn't do this in this organization, but in the last like 3 or 4 years we have. So if RS means goes up, we can go back to the legislature and actually ask for more money. And then based on your ADM and stuff, we can divide it and stuff, and then it can be sent out to you. So if that passes, you'll get a little more money, which is valuable.
So those aren't in any kind of priority. Those are all basically vulnerable?
Yeah, there's no priority here. This is not a priority list. It's just a list organized as you see. Okay. Any other questions? I don't know. Was that helpful to you? I know it's long, but.
Yeah, no, that's good.
Okay. Any other questions or? I'm losing my mind here. SOC reviewed, proposed. There we go. Short and sweet. Okay, I told you about this, right? 50, 35, 15. So you got that down. I'll actually help Amber make a page break there when she sends it. This will be sent to you, page probably sometime here in the next day or two or next week. Guys, I'm only assuming this, but I ask everybody anyway, based on your capacity, based on your condition, except for, I would say this, district, let me say this, district has requested, right, 4 component projects, right?
Mhm.
Component projects, okay, oops. Just move that over there. So there we go. And is it fair to say that it has no other capital requests? Is that okay?
You know, last year, I believe you attached the master plan we put together into the facility plan. And if you read that executive summary, it does suggest that consolidation of the K-6 schools as a capital construction project.
Okay. You want me to write that?
That's up to page.
Or you could put it down in the unique thing, Troy. So that's one thing I was going to say is, because remember when I called you in a little panic a few months ago?
You've never called me a panic.
It was a light panic. And I said, hey, we need to have a plan B in case I get 170 kids a year is what that projection was saying. Clearly we haven't had that. But I do think either up there or in unique issues, ideas, or concerns, we do have to have in the back of our heads some kind of plan for an immediate influx of kids if we get those. So far it's been kind of steady, like just a few more and a few more. And like Mitch said, we've been able to fit them thus far. But we're having some different needs, I would say, Troy. Like we're getting a lot of ELL students and things that so far haven't impacted our facilities, but could, depending on what those end up looking like. Or we could end up having a need like we had at the high school with that, you know, with a student with special needs or something that we're totally not equipped for. It hasn't happened yet, but we're having a lot of influx right now.
Okay.
So just maybe put it in the back of our minds. And like Dano said, we have a plan that would give us more classrooms and more space, but less square footage actually. That's in that plan that was attached from last year.
Okay. And your immediate increase, that's based, I want to say oil field development. Is that
almost all?
What you say?
Although, so a couple of other
Yes.
things. Yeah, so some of it's construction. So we're building a gas plant. We're building a pipeline. So it's related to gas and oil, but it's not necessarily
That's what's
just
off the highway. You can
in the
see
field.
it.
Some of
The
it's,
town. That thing is huge.
Just north of I-25.
Yeah.
yeah.
I was wondering what that was.
So there's a big old gas plant going. Well,
And
you'll
then
see
there's
it.
wind,
when we
there's
go
wind
back.
going out north of.
Possibly
Yeah.
a kosher plant.
So, yeah, so some of it is just building roads.
So gas field also oil.
There's
field.
got to be a
Yeah.
1,000 guys out working on that gas plant. It's the biggest construction site I've seen in Wyoming.
It looks like
Really?
you drive by at night
Looks like
and
a
there,
city.
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
looks like, yeah, it looks like a small town.
Yeah, don't try to get a hotel room at Douglas.
Really?
Yeah, I know.
That's true. I mean, I end up having to stay in Casper if I don't book it
Yeah.
a week ahead of time.
We had auditors from the nutrition
even
department, and they had to
booking
stay in
It's
Casper.
a lot,
Yeah.
like 160 a night for.
Well, and so remember like the old Holiday Inn, the Douglas Inn?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Wasn't even open for a real long time, and then just one wing of it was open. Now it's like, whoosh. Full.
Really? That's great. So I said the district, read that first sentence. Everybody
The
good with that?
district,
So that's a good question. Troy, that brings us back full circle. What's the immediate response that can be offered?
By the state?
Yeah.
We're putting together a priority list, and that priority list will generate recommendations to the commission.
Could the district have their own study of immediate responses if primary population bumped up to 200?
Well,
Or-
and it does, right?
Mhm.
To a certain degree.
Not a short-term solution.
Short-term
I mean,
fix.
if we get 200 kids or 150 kids, obviously we can't put them all in the primary school.
And if we
they've
get
already got
100,
like a whole bunch
even
of
if we got
modules out there.
150
Yeah, and they're
kids
using those for classrooms.
and they were 10 in each grade, good to go. That's not what
Not what
happens.
No.
So unless we get that, Troy, we could have a little. And mostly
It's the elementaries that are growing,
It's-
it's not the middle
yeah.
school and the high school.
the
But
middle
you'll get
school
there.
a little bit, but like Tracy said, it's almost all elementary students at this point.
Dan's, and I'll say this with fun, he's kind of old school. And in a way, I'm old school, because I remember back to the Ken Burnett days. I remember back to the beginning of this organization. And I wasn't here in 2003, but I started in 2005 as a facilities director, going to all of the commission meetings. And here's how it used to happen. Districts the project managers were, I mean, they were integrally involved with the districts. Major maintenance development, what they approved, what happened, what kind of capacity needs they need, what kind of condition needs, what kind of potential capital requests. And then they would get this stuff and collect it from their individual districts. And then they would sit, and I'm not kidding you, they would sit in a room like this, not quite this big, and for 2 days, they would say, okay, here's the needs across the state, and here's how we're going to prioritize them. And then they'd do that. And then the commission was not, at that time, spending enough money quick enough. So the legislature's like, hey, we got $2 billion out there, but you know what? You're not spending it. So then they said to Ken Darrier, the director at that point, they said, Ken, you have freedom, okay, to organize the list, priority list, and we need that money spent, get after it. So, and there it goes. Well, that got kind of a little bit loose. And
I'm just having a bad memory, Daniel, just saying.
I go back to 97. Plan 1 was part of the original MGT scoring, and that was intended to be an honest
pipeline.
empirical scoring of all the buildings in the state. And I guess you're going to do another list in May.
Mhm.
And if the primary school scores high in capacity and facility condition, which we know it will, and we don't know about the educational suitability piece, but you might end up high up on this list in May. Let's say that happens. What goes from there? What happens after May? Did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
No, no problem. There's going to be a recommendation to the commission by the department based on their rules and regs. And again, working with the governor's office and legislative leaders to know what the budget should be, kind of recommendation going forward, give or take, and fitting it within that.
And I'm just guessing because I know the district and I know that building. And I mean, that's a real hotbed, that primary school in Douglas. I mean, if something needs to be done about something, it's that building.
Yeah, and the hard part about this is, over the years, subjective feelings have become less and less important. unless those subjective feelings can be somehow portrayed to legislators who have the power to do things outside of our rules, regs, and state statutes, or within state statutes, but only they have the authority to appropriate funds. So that's kind of where that falls eventually.
I'm not being subjective. I'm working within your matrix of the three categories.
Well, I was talking about my own feelings.
Oh,
okay, because every school district comes in here, I'm like, man, I wish we had the money we could do that. Oh man, I see what your issue is, and so I start rallying around. I personally start rallying around school districts, but that's not my job. My job is to be objective and follow the process and the rules and regs that govern my responsibilities and our department's responsibility. Yeah. So I was talking about me personally.
Just brainstorming that real rough conceptual design we put together to move the primary over to the DIS site was to keep DIS in operation while we built a new school behind it. You could build half of it. You could build one grade level and move it up if that's what funds dictated, and then you could complete it and demolish that too. So it could be done in a modular fashion.
Yeah. Without any modulars. So the nice
All right,
thing
modular is a
about
bad
that
word. I was going to say phased, but phased is a bad word too. So we'll call it incremental.
Yeah. But the nice thing about that is it wouldn't disrupt.
Right.
And so we wouldn't have to build something and move a bunch of kids, and then we wouldn't have to get a whole bunch of modulars.
It's a beautiful site. You got a good building on there already. It's a natural long-term solution to end up with a K6 over there, in my opinion.
Yeah, which addresses Amber's point from earlier.
This is my fine. If we could put this in a contract and fine print it, that's what I'm doing right here. SCD will continue to follow state statute and SFC rules and regulations.
It's the scripture.
When making recommendations, we had something so funny one time in Teton County. We should tell you about that after the meeting. And regulations when making recommendations to the SFC for potential projects or something like that. Do you like how I make it up as I go? Okay.
So in the current biennium that's right now, how much is in there for capital construction?
Right now, it's a total of this right here, this 33. And that includes major maintenance though, but yeah. Oh, actually, let me go back over here, 34 million.
Well, this is in addition to what got appropriated.
Yeah, I can't, oh golly, I can't remember what the first year one was.
I was just trying to get that. I can't remember either. I'm just trying to get a feel for how much in the total biennium, how much they fund for capital
I'm thinking it was toward the 200 million, but I could be wrong, like 170 or something. Sorry, I can't remember that. I was actually a little bit surprised that this went through on the supplemental. What was it, a biennium ago that they approved 17 million on the front end of it, and then they came back and approved another 60 million or something, but they shut it down. So they're moving forward. And again, guys, like anybody else, we just have to stand back and watch the legislative process flow through, and who knows what the result. I mean, on that year, that was the last 10 minutes before midnight deal between the Senate leaders and the House leaders. So who knows what will happen this year. Okay, I always give you last word here, or close to last word. Anything else that we haven't discussed that we need to discuss before we close the meeting?
No, I was wondering, I guess Tracy and I were talking a little bit about this on the way up with that quarterly payments for major maintenance. In order to do, especially us where we do a lot of big projects in the summer, that makes it very hard. Like, could we, okay, once that comes into effect, have a big project, we won't have all of our major maintenance, but pay for that out of, say, British Reserve or whatever, and then pay that back with the major maintenance when we get it?
Loan ourselves money, so to speak.
That is a district and council decision between you and your council. We do not advise on your finances and how you manage your money.
But Troy.
But there's no
here's-
major maintenance violation if we pay, because the check from major maintenance will go to depreciation
Well,
reserve.
if you spend major maintenance in a biennium or in a year, in a fiscal year, and you report it, it cannot exceed your.
No, it wouldn't
general
exceed.
fund, Right.
It's just a cash flow thing.
So, but again, guys, I mean, we're not keeping track of your bank account. All we know is your 680 comes in and it better not exceed what you have. Outside of that, that's your realm. That's your financial realm and your decision. We would never advise you on
But
that.
it's gonna look weird on the 680 because instead of the money going to these contractors, the money's gonna go to depreciation reserve.
Oh, no, yeah, no, the expenditures on major maintenance must go to work codes and those.
It would go to a work code.
Well, it would have to be identified within the work code. That's an integrity issue, I think.
Yeah, because you can turn in an invoice.
Yeah, I mean, how you're paying for it, it has to reconcile with that
Spending
bank
money
account. It
before
has to
you
be.
Well,
has to be
it
directly
would.
tied.
So I pay Russell Construction 100,000, I pay K&R 50,000. I just don't have that 150,000 in my major maintenance bank account.
Yet,
So I put,
Yeah.
you're banking on what's coming.
right,
Yeah,
so I
right.
put 150,000 from depreciation reserve into my major maintenance bank account. I write those checks out of major maintenance, and then
When we get the money.
when
for
I get major maintenance money, I'm gonna have to pay it back to depreciation reserve.
Okay, so, interesting. We're gonna
It's
have.
just like getting a bank loan.
Oh,
I mean, if I couldn't cash flow, so I go get a bank loan from Commerce County Bank, and I put that money into major maintenance. I write the checks out to the contractors, and then I pay Commerce County Bank back when I get the major maintenance
We'll get
money.
JJ in here, but a lot of times there's, within the legislation and how the funding is appropriated, there, in the contracts, it states too that, the money's not guaranteed that it's gonna show up.
Well, you're
But
talking,
that-
right, you're talking about, you're just leveraging, what
Yeah,
you're
it's no different than
anticipating.
getting a bank loan.
You're leveraging future payments that, and we'll let JJ dive into this, but there's an issue about borrowing against monies you haven't received yet. So we'll let JJ.
But we're
get
just
that.
borrowing on money we already have, so if we didn't get it, no one's hurt by that, it's our money, it's in the
No,
reserve.
it would just stay, it's a legal use of depreciation reserve money.
I would prefer to have JJ talk about that.
And JJ may be out there, he's like, I'm not gonna go in and respond to that.
There's some problems with
So I think that here's the bottom line for us. We're not an enforcement agency. Okay? Our responsibility is not enforcement, right? We are to apply state statute and abide by it and to run our operations accordingly. For you, all we're looking at, people, is did you put in a planned work order? Is it categorized right? Was it approved? Okay? At the end of the year, because it's in your bank account, not ours, at the end of the year, does your 680 reconcile from that bank account, and does it correlate directly to your work orders and expenditures thereof?
Just get in here.
After that, okay, what you do or did or didn't do on your finances, on your budgetary process within your accounts is none of our business. But JJ, is kind of interesting because the school district's asking, basically, can we borrow from Peter to pay Paul and leverage future major maintenance monies, maybe, and pay, like when we go to the quarterly payments, and leverage future major maintenance monies, depend on that. Can we borrow from one internal account within the school district and basically, though, and report it as being paid on the 680 with major maintenance? They never exceed their major maintenance balance.
So what,
But they might precede the
It's just
the
a cash
receipt of
flow
those.
thing.
yeah,
So
so
quarterly payments.
what you're talking about, I mean, yeah, we're going to the quarterly payments now, it's gonna happen. So what you're talking about, I mean, if you're needing, are you talking about like a bridge loan from your general fund over?
Right, from
wherever?
depreciation reserve, or
Yeah.
depreciation reserve. Yeah, just,
Yeah,
we need to
'cause-
get this project done in the summer. We
Yeah.
can't do it when kids are there. We only have a
Absolutely.
quarter of our
Absolutely.
money.
Yeah.
We have to put in a $500,000 football field. We've only got 300,000.
I don't see any issue bridge loaning into major maintenance. I wouldn't bridge loan out of major maintenance though. We had a district that,
Well, we just have to pay. I mean, and that's where in my mind, the major maintenance.
Before
you
the
have
end of
to
the
pay that.
fiscal year, clear the receivable and the payable if
Yeah.
you can.
Well, yeah, as soon as we get the major maintenance
what I
money.
Well, and what I said is, by the way, I didn't remind you we're being recorded.
It's fine. I'm not saying anything.
Okay,
It's fine.
and I apologize for that.
No.
So yeah, I mean, I basically said, listen, we're not an enforcement agency, right? And so what they do on their end is really their business, as long as the 680, right, reconciles to their expenditures at the end of the year, and there's enough money in that bank account to cover it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I
pretty
mean,
well our
I've
job.
seen, I mean, we've had districts that, they bridge loaned into major maintenance. You know, some of them, they didn't have the receivable and the payable cleared by the end of the fiscal year. That's why I have the section on the 680 report where the due from and to, you can put in there. If you can clear, I mean, I think a lot of them probably do it, bridge loan into, and they clear it before
they do the 680.
and it never shows on the 680. But yeah, you don't want to. The example I'm going to throw out is, I got to make payroll for the summer. We're going to bridge loan.
Out of
200 grand out of
major
maintenance.
No,
Now,
we
I'm
would-
using that as an example
Right.
because that happened once. I mean, everything's fine now. It was all made whole, but yeah, there's no issue with that. So.
Well, you were willing to say more than I was, but you're the finance guy, so I appreciate your
Yeah.
insight. Thank
And
you
you tried to incriminate me on a recording?
No.
Calm down, Troy.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I should-
But that may become more of a thing that districts do, when they don't have that money in
When
July.
they don't,
and the
and
projects are in
especially the
July.
smaller school districts, I
Yeah.
mean, you get to
That's
the bigger ones and they're so, they got $100 bills falling out of their pocket as they walk out the door, So some of them
They would deny that.
I know they would, but no, when you get to the smaller districts, cash flow becomes more and more crucial, so.
Okay.
Is that it?
Wow.
Yeah, that really.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
you're welcome.
Thanks, JJ.
Anything else, district? Consultant?
One new school, security vestibule, and 5 door position monitor switches, and we're good.
Make it happen, right? Okay, staff, all three. This is the least amount of people we've had in any meeting.
On our side of the fence.
We usually have like 6 here, so I apologize, but,
And he was gonna make me go stay.
and we're
Good thing you came.
working hard.
No, we
Anything
felt
from you guys?
cheated.
I enjoy the legislative rundown though and everything too. I do find that very informative.
I'm gonna go ahead and quit the recording. You're welcome.